after the pledge and all that.
Yeah.
We're ready to start. All right.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody. It is 6:39 p.m. on Tuesday, May 24th, and you are at a Common Council of the City of Wausau meeting. Thank you very much for joining us. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. The clerk will call the roll or just tell us who's here.
We have 10 members present.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
I'm counted as a member,
Correct. You have 9 voting members present.
unless you somehow manage to tie. All righty, next item on our agenda, proclamations. I don't have any. I think we took care of them all the last few meetings. The next item is public comment, pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. The first person I have is Benjamin Erickson.
Hello, thanks for your time today. So I'm here to share my thoughts about the community outreach specialist position that's on the agenda for today. So I've shared my support in the past to the council to the policing task force and if there's been any other committee. I still support the position for sure. I do think that it is needed. However, I would ask for your vote today to send it back to HR or not make a decision on that position today because of the previous, so there's a finance committee meeting before that, it's been approved through finance. My concern is that it's going to be a position within the police department of the city of Wausau. So I'm sure some of you know on Monday, May 16th at a public health and safety meeting to show the chief, Ben Bliven, showed a video to the committee of the types of interactions the police officers are having with the homeless in the downtown area. So by no means am I saying the homeless have the right to scare those coming and going from work downtown, the right to unlawfully sleep or loiter, the right to unlawfully defecate or urinate, nor the right to unlawfully fight or cause a disturbance. Another thing the video shows are their faces. Even more shocking than that, the video shows, or the audio shares their first names and last names of some of those individuals. Today, over a week later, I'm still shocked and very emotional about that video after watching it, and wonder why that their faces weren't blurred out and their names weren't bleeped out of the video. So I ask, as I did the finance committee, I asked Chief Ben Bliven why. So we also have to remember that some, if not most, of the homeless are struggling with trauma. That trauma causes a struggle with mental health, severe depression, alcoholism, drug abuse, just to name a few. So what is the solution? Again, it was brought up at a Human Resource Committee May 9th. Members Geiselman and Killian expressed concern about the position being under the police department, and after wording was added, they accepted that in the future that position could be moved to another department if necessary. With that, again, I vote or ask you to vote against it, send it back to the HR committee, that it be placed in another department, or there's a time frame on that future, 6 months. If you want to keep that, but put a time frame on it. In 6 months, it needs to be addressed within the police department how that position is progressing. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Sandra Kelch.
Tonight, I would like to address a few statements made last week by our chief of police. First and foremost, the video that has been publicly posted of the most vulnerable in our community, those struggling with addiction as a result of trauma, and those with mental illness. The Wausau PD used body and surveillance cameras intended for officer accountability, safety, and liability, paid for by tax dollars, to record the unhoused in a dehumanizing effort to further the agenda to criminalize homelessness. I believe you will be asked to vote on using ARPA funds to fund an outreach social worker under the supervision of the Wausau PD. Prior to last week, I supported this position. Now I have completely changed my mind and asking you to table this to investigate other options for supervision of this position. Effective social work is based on trust, especially with the unhoused. HIPAA is a standard practice and is vital in the field of social services. Humiliating and dehumanizing trauma victims and the mentally ill is not effective practices used by any social service agency. In fact, it is a vile and cruel practice that causes more harm than good. Any social worker who would be okay with these practices by their supervisors are not of the integrity needed to be successful in this position. There needs to be a mutual respect between this outreach worker and their supervisors for this to be successful. Hiring somebody who would not be able to respect the practices of their superiors or hiring a social worker who has no professional integrity to uphold HIPAA would be a total waste of ARPA funds. This position is needed, and I think the supervising agency would need to understand the integrity of HIPAA and the negative effects of dehumanizing a targeted group of people who are traumatized and mentally ill. A lesson I learned after escaping my marriage is that when they can no longer control you, they try to control others' perceptions of you. A vague blanket accusation was made at that meeting that was put out into the universe to continue to demonize the agencies dedicated to ending homelessness. There is no agency that encourages clients to break the law, and no agency that provides alcohol with a meal. I invite each and every one of you to come to the Marty bus on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday at 11. Come see for yourself what is handed out and what is said to our clients. It will allow you to fully understand the issue and to vote accordingly. So please accept my invite. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Amanda Ledecky.
Hi, I'm here to address the video on our unhoused citizen that was shown at the Public Health and Safety meeting. It was hard to watch for many reasons. Mental health and addictions are not pretty or easy to watch or deal with. And unfortunately, until we find solutions for these issues, these calls to the PD will keep happening. We have weekly interactions with everyone that was shown on the video, and to know why they are truly struggling and that they had one of their worst days on video had me in tears. Lord knows my worst day would not be fun to watch, as I know most of yours would not be either. I am beyond shocked that our clients' faces and names were not edited out. This video is now available for all to see at any time on YouTube. That will make an interesting conversation for any future employers who may stumble across that video. I wish our clients' identities would have been protected, like the citizens the Wausau PD had interactions with on their virtual patrol videos, which are also available on Facebook. I want to address a few comments that were made regarding local agencies. Our group name was not called out, but I was raised with the if the boot fits, address it mentality. Our group does ask for donations from our donors, our local citizens who believe wholeheartedly in our mission, for survival gear, aka camping gear. Our group does pass them out to all unhoused citizens, but our group never tells them to sleep in the camp in the parks. In fact, we tell them to hide, and hide well. We explain to them that there is nowhere for them to go in Wausau, so they should do their best to not be seen. We explain if they are caught, they will face citations and possibly jail time. We also tell them to hide for their own safety, which is never brought up in any of these meetings. We also do ask for lunches for passing out, but I have never heard of any agency, including our group, asking or providing alcohol to our clients. I cannot speak on behalf of individual citizens. As for the draft amendment for the littering ordinance that Chief Blivens brought up, to say it was mind-boggling would be an understatement. They're not allowed in the parks after hours, and now they're not allowed in the day with their camping or their gear. So our on-house isn't allowed on private or public property. For the third meeting in a row, where should we take them? Or are they just not allowed to exist? Our citizens need housing, they need rehab facilities, and most importantly, they need your citizens need your help. What is even more frustrating is we are now only talking about a small percentage of our on-house population, when there's an average of over 300 students, yes, kids, between Wausau School District, DC Everest, and NTC that are either couch surfing, living out of hotels, living out of their vehicles, or living on the streets. It's disgusting. I refuse to stop handing out survival gear until that number hits 0. If I'm ever asked or told to stop, please find someone who can look those individuals, families, and kids in the eyes and tell them no, because I am not built that way. I'm asking the City Council to reach out to all agencies, and I am personally willing to sit down with each and every one of you to help you find solutions and to stop with the wet Band-Aid ideas. Thank you, and I'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you. All right, the next item we have is our consent agenda. That's file number 220501 through file number 940825. I would entertain a motion. Oh. Looks like I have a motion from Henke and a second from Killian. Any discussion? Okay, I think we're ready to vote whenever the clerk says.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right. The next item on our agenda is file number 220503, mayor's appointments. We don't have them right now. So we're now moving on to file number 190921. It's a reconsideration of an economic development motion. Do you want me to read the whole thing, or do you want to hit? Okay. Resolution, reconsideration of the resolution approving Second Amendment to the development agreement for the Wausau Center Mall redevelopment project with the Greater Wausau Prosperity Partnership, LTD, and Wausau Opportunity Zone, Inc. But before I accept anything, I'm going to pass it over to our city attorney.
So you'll recall, and for the public that's watching, that at the very last regular council meeting, an amendment was made by Alder Larson, seconded by Alder Killian. Then based on a not completely factual statement by me, a vote was taken on that amendment, which failed 2-9. Then the unamended resolution passed 9-2. So according to our council rules in chapter 2.16, this matter ethically needed to be brought back for reconsideration. And according to Robert's rules, a motion to reconsider would be necessary to be brought and seconded by somebody who is on the prevailing side. So of the 9 that approved the resolution as unamended, someone would need to move initially to start this to reconsider this. Then the resolution itself is brought back before the assembly. The question on which the vote will be reconsidered in the exact position it occupied the moment before it was voted on originally. Now, it was the motion to amend that failed. The entire matter, the question, not just the vote, is back on the agenda. So the question is then again open to debate, amendment, or any other action that may be appropriate or in order. So I would probably suggest that first we take that motion to reconsider to get it back on the table, so to speak, with a second. And then Alder Larson, if you wanted to renew your motion to amend again, you are free to do that, and we'll take the debate from there.
All right, so I need a motion from the prevailing side. I have a motion by McElhaney and a second. Does the second by Watson? Okay. So would you like to, we now have a motion and a second to reconsider. We now vote on that before we start discussion. Is there any discussion? Are we allowed to have discussion on reconsideration? I guess I could have asked this ahead of time. I don't recall. Does anybody wish to speak on the reconsideration? Okay, so we just got to make sure. I saw Becky first, and then I think it's debatable too. Okay. I'm going to make the, I'm going to say it's debatable as chair. So Alder McElhaney.
Thank you. I'm the one who talked to the city attorney the next day after this came through, and my reconsideration of what I agreed to was the reconsideration of the motion on the amendment of the parking ramp, which was what was discussed. The reconsideration was, the amendment was of Alder Larson wanting to amend the parking ramp, the second parking ramp, to state that if the city would relinquish using the parking ramp, would need to pay market rate for that parking ramp. So that is what I would like my motion to reconsider to be, is on that amendment that was voted down due to the fact that we decided that it was, that we had heard that it was not something we could vote on, or it was done previously.
I'm going to turn it over to, oh, you're,
So I spoke with Mary Gady previous to the meeting, our deputy clerk who's put these on agendas before. And Mary, you feel the whole question is brought back, the whole resolution, even though the vote, I thought we were reconsidering the vote to amend, but if that changes, we'd have to vote on the main resolution again anyway as amended. So I think it brings the whole question back, not just the vote on the amendment. So the approval of the second amendment is back on for discussion. I don't know, Mayor, if you wanted anybody to present anything initially on any of this or provide any information. There was quite a bit of information provided in the packet. So,
okay, before we talk about it, I think I'd like to have a vote on reconsideration, but Alder Killian has requested to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll keep this brief. I just wanted to commend Ms. Jacobson for her action on this, addressing it when she became aware that the information wasn't entirely accurate, and I think she should be commended for her character and forthrightness on this. A very good example. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we vote on whether or not we would like to reconsider this item? Okay, we're voting on whether or not we want to reconsider. I've said that a couple times. Just making sure we're all clear.
You may begin voting.
We are, wait, Alder Lukens, I think. Oh,
There
got
you
it.
go. Motion passes 8-1.
Okay, so we will now bring this back as it was initially presented. I think we have a memo, so maybe I'm going to invite, before we talk about this, invite the Community Development Director up to kind of discuss a little bit what's in the memo, and then we can get cracking on this too.
Sure. So it was requested by several alders that I create a timeline and investment kind of profile or chart of the public and private investments in the mall site to date. Of course, we're not talking back in the 80s. We're going just from this most recent period forward. So I wanted to just kind of overview the memo and just say that this was an educational opportunity. I know that we have some new council members. We also have some members that were here and then left and now are back. And we've been addressing this kind of over time, one agreement or amendment at a time. So it was a good opportunity, I think, to educate everyone and just kind of get on the same page about the broad, big picture here. So I attempted to address where we were, how we got there, and where we're going. So the overview of the timeline is mostly chronological. It's as chronological as I could keep it and kind of keep it comprehensible at the same time. So it does clearly lay out the downside of the mall, largely on the same timeline as other malls across the country. And that redevelopment of the mall was imminent. As other mall sites have done, we explored eds and meds, or educational and medical institutions, indoor play areas, indoor camper storage, anything that would repurpose the building. And then when COVID hit and that downslide really continued, it became clear that those continued mall operations, or operations as a mall, were not going to be feasible. So then the new development, I think, is really going to, now we're at a blank slate, so I think that the new development that we are working on will really help build and spark a new momentum, not just for our downtown and the entire community, but the region as a whole. So this lays out a public-private partnership in which the mall was developed originally with a public-private partnership, and this redevelopment will also take a public-private partnership to require, or to accomplish the same type of regional destination that the original mall was back when it opened in the 80s. And there are plenty of other past developments that the city of Wausau has participated in as a public-private partnership, and those are very strong partnerships that tend to get us exactly where we need to go. So this area is really the heart of the regional economy that we're talking about, and it really can't sit as it is right now. It is a literal blank slate in the middle of our downtown. So this project needs to move forward for the health and prosperity of the entire community and region, and I think we stand to gain a lot because of that public-private partnership. So like I said, that's the general overlay of this memo, and I will take any questions.
Okay, maybe before we have questions, I would entertain a motion to get this conversation started, if anybody has one. I have a motion by Larson to approve the development agreement, the second amendment to the development agreement for the Wausau Center Mall redevelopment project with the Greater Wausau Prosperity Partnership. Okay, well, what are you motioning then? We need a motion on the table. So I have a motion to approve the second development amendment, okay, by Herbst, and a second by Henke. All right, we have a motion that we can start talking. So if you'd like to speak, I think, do you push your button on your, otherwise anyone?
Gary.
All right, Alder Gisselman.
Well, Mr. Larson, I think this is the time that if you wish to make your amendment again to, I have serious questions about the parking ramp also, but I think you had some thoughts last time, and I'm not sure if you're willing or not, but if you aren't, then I would be.
Yes, I'll go ahead.
Okay, so it sounds like we have an amendment, but could you tell me what the amendment is?
The amendment was to go from getting the mall parking lot for $1 to get it to market rate.
Okay. So there is a motion to amend that instead of the opportunity for WAS to purchase the parking ramp for $1, that they will purchase it,
Press your amend button on your phone. Thank you.
they will pay fair market value. That's the amendment. Is there a second to this amendment? Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay, Alder Killian, thank you. All right. Alder Gisselman, you have the floor if you'd like to speak. Otherwise, Alder, okay, I'll let you go. Yes, you're listed as one. Yes.
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
Oh, you have your speaker light on that you would like to speak.
That was in reference to asking Mr. Larson.
Okay. We'll clear it. All right, next up, Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I went on to complete this amendment because I didn't see anything here that justified changing it. I look over this report, I see, first of all, I got two different things. I mean, I synced my machine yesterday morning, and this morning I had all different figures again. So what's right and what's wrong? I see here, now if I were a CEO of a company and I see $2 million in additional expenses, I would ask, what additional expenses? Lawyers, consultant fees. and why weren't these fees included in here? I also, as far as this future investment things goes, I mean, you're just grabbing figures from the sky. I mean, we don't know if WAS is going to have 20 to 40 million into this, because we all know that developers come and developers go. Developers have their skin in the game too. And when you say that, for the cities here term, you put NA, well, I've been around it long enough to know that NA is not there, because that with any developer coming along, they're going to ask for at least 10 to 20, possibly more percentage in city participation. So I just kind of look at all this and shake my head, and I know in this street dedication, I don't quite see that. I don't get it. I mean, $1.9 million because we're building streets through their land so they can build properties on our streets. Well, that's really, I correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not an expense. That's just something that's there already, So I don't. That's why I don't see anything to justify changing my amendment here. So thank you.
Sure. Would you like me, if I can respond to each kind of point that you made in order? So the figures, yes, you saw new figures come out yesterday, and that was for a couple different reasons. One was that I had a media request that asked about legal fees, and I did not have that included before. So I added legal fees to the investments and obligations to date, and then I also kind of added a line of professional fees at the future investment, in the future investment chart. So those legal fees I didn't get until just, I think like a couple hours before this meeting, so I didn't have a chance to include those. And then I also, in the process of amending that investments and obligations to date chart, realized after talking, I called Chuck Godorsky at WAS, and I said, what's included in the additional expenses? And so legal fees are included in there, but then I also realized that taxes were included, so then I subtracted out the amount of taxes that had been paid, or are being paid. So included in the additional WAS expenses are the consulting fees for revitalization, tenant relocations, utility and other operating expenses, the management company that they contracted with when they still owned an operating mall, legal fees, as I said, real estate taxes, survey platting and creation, and then those fees are not disclosed because the WAS financials are not up for public record. They are a private company, and I believe that is in an agreement somewhere. So those are some of the numbers that changed. And then I also got a specific figure on the street redesign, or the street design and construction, so that was a new additional figure as well. The 20 to 40 million is for Block 4. I've provided as much information as I can during this stage in the development process, and so I wanted the council to know that's the investment that we're looking at having come into Block 4 in construction costs. So those aren't numbers out of the sky. Those are things that I'm in conversations with about. The NA that you see for the city are all related to taxes, and those taxes, we can't pay taxes on our own land. All of the land that we own is tax exempt, it's not something we can pay taxes on. So that's why NA is in those specific city columns. And then the street dedication is an amount of, so that's the value of the land that WAS is deeding back to the city, which was an increase in land volume from the First Amendment, and the Second Amendment now makes that about it's 113,119 square feet of street valued at $15 a square foot, which equals that 1,951,785. So that is the value of the land being dedicated back to the city, which is why that number's in there.
Well, then, thank you, because that just goes ahead and confirms what I just said, because they should pay fair market value, because how many square feet at $15 a square foot does that mall parking lot take up? Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Killian. Excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this info. There was one other row in that initial, the original memo. It was under the operational loss termination in the WAS private column, and that was at about 1.9 million. What did that refer to, Ms. Brodick?
So the updated memo shows that is now in the city public category and just a negative amount of 327,000. So that number was so in the original development agreement, the city had committed to paying WAS 7 annual payments of $327,000 in basically operational loss support. So that was to keep the mall kind of operating in the black. So then when we did pay that amount in 2020, but then when the mall operations, ceased in 2021, then we've saved that amount of money in 2021 and going forward. And I did realize that I didn't put in the additional savings amount that we are no longer incurring because of that, basically it would be 5 remaining payments of $327,000 a year in the future investments category, which amounts to $1,635,000. So if you kind of add that negative value into the city and public investment side, that $5,034,579.17 to $5,534,579.17, that becomes $3,399,579.17 to $3,899,579.17.
Thank you. When they decided to forgo, or it was renegotiated that they would forgo those annual payments, those simply did not occur moving forward, correct?
Correct.
There was no cash expense there. They just didn't happen.
It's a
right?
cost savings.
Yes, but not necessarily an investment on the private side, correct?
Correct. I'm showing the, the total financial picture of the mall. So if investments was the wrong word to use, it's still, I think it's still applicable to look at that as a total financial picture of this public-private partnership.
Thank you. And then on the ramp issue, there were some statements and the finance director had provided some commentary at the last meeting about the parking ramp number 2, I believe, Sears, and the potential costs of demolition and how that may not be appealing to others in the private sector simply because of the potential cost of demolition and what have you. I understand that, but what I don't fully understand is that in other cities and parts of the country, it appears that there's been on numerous occasions successful retrofitting and redevelopment of parking ramps, particularly when their revenues have waned and they don't seem to be that great of a cash producer on that side. And I know there's likely some costs in repair and so forth in the ramp, but it does seem that based on the fact that, 1, the structure does not have to be demolished, 2, it doesn't have to be a parking ramp in the future, and 3, that it's on 2.05 acres of land in the middle of downtown, that there might be more value and opportunity with that property, I think, than was characterized with the very narrow parking ramp use and perhaps a necessary demolition if someone didn't want to use it for that. So just looking at other ways that could be utilized in the marketplace, potentially for valuable uses and profitable uses, I do think it has some value. And also, I think, it was shown on the sheet that there was $2 million plus of various expenses, some of them legal fees, taxes were paid. Obviously, if not from mall operations and revenue, money came from somewhere that was utilizing. So if it can come up with money for legal fees and other expenses, I'm a little confused as to why it's only got $1 in its pocket to pay for a parking ramp. And these are strange times, but the fact that it costs more to buy a gallon of gas than multiple city parking ramps in Wausau, Wisconsin, I find that disconcerting. So even if this amendment is not successful on fair market value, surely, and I think just out of respect for the Wausau people and community, something better could be offered than $1. So I do think there's some middle ground here, and $1 simply is not it. Thank you.
Sure, I can address some of those points. So first, I believe it's the Penny's parking ramp and not the Sears. Please, someone correct me if I'm wrong about that. But the reason we talked about the $1 option for the Penny's ramp is because it would be a redevelopment area. So it would be, the contemplation is down the road, potentially there would be redevelopment on top of that ramp, which would necessitate another use. I would also kind of frame this, and I should have started with this, I'll frame this by saying this is on the occasion that the city ceases to desire to operate the ramp, which is really not in any foreseeable future. We just accounted for a possibility because we wanted to make sure that, you know, these things are thought of when we enter these types of agreements. So I understand your points about the demolition. I don't have a cost on that, or the repurposing, but I also think that that's kind of what's meant to be accomplished in the long run with those things, is that WAS would eventually repurpose those ramps. We don't know that they would demo it, and I think the reason they would demo it is probably the same reason we would cease operating it, is that those maintenance costs became infeasible for the city to keep absorbing, and that then the ramp probably wouldn't be safe for redevelopment in the first place. And I also, like I said, kind of, just a few seconds ago, I framed this all in this is very speculative and very hypothetical. We, again, put this language into the Second Amendment, not with the foreseeable future, or not with this in a foreseeable future. We just wanted to account for a possibility. And so with the legal fees and other expenses, I also want to address that, having $1 in their pocket for the ramp, but then legal fees for this. This is a very expensive process on the front end. This is, this takes a lot of time and effort to get these development agreements and all of these amendments right. I mean, our Second Amendment in cleaning up all of this title, like when the mall was created, the reason it stood the test of time was because we had to tie up all of these different entities to make these agreements sustainable and to make them work. Now we're trying to unravel all of that, and that's decades down the road. So it is very expensive on the front end, and what we'd be looking at the back end is a repurposing that serves the greater community rather than a parking ramp being there and not being a benefit to the city to operate. Again, going to say it again, very hypothetical, very speculative. This is simply accounting for a possibility.
Thank you. And just as I think an important point of clarification, I believe that what we are speaking of tonight is both parking ramps, and that's why it was brought back for reconsideration. I believe the First Amendment to the agreement removed the Sears ramp, and this intends to reintroduce that under the dollar store umbrella, so to speak. So I believe it does involve both ramps and Mr. Mello, when he came up last time, he indicated that they didn't think they were going to demolish it. They were going to use it for parking. So, I mean, that seems a little perhaps different than what I just heard. But whatever the case, there's surely market value here, and doesn't have to be demolished or turned into rubble. Apparently, that's pretty valuable land, just as it is, or if it's repurposed. And the final thing I would note is that on the street dedication, the 1.9 mil, apparently the purchase was for 3 mil on that, with the city putting in 1 and was putting in 2. So I find it a little hard to believe that they're giving us that little back, and that's worth 2, because that's essentially what they put in to begin with. So I'm not sure if that area actually, in relation to the price that was paid, that makes a lot of sense there. And I think in other communities, they might even charge, have a developer impact fee, where if we're going to incur a lot of costs on infrastructure and services to service a massive redevelopment, that might actually cost them more in other locations. So that's not doing us any favor. We're actually helping them by building infrastructure for their redevelopment. And with that incremental land you mentioned, there was an attempt to make an exchange or trade for that land on the West Side Battery property. And that wasn't appealing then, and I really don't think it makes much sense now in terms of that value on the street dedication. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. It does say that, it does refer in the bullet point to cease operating one or both of the parking lots. So that is part of that bullet point. So I just wanted to make reference to the fact that I think I appreciate Mr. Larson for bringing the issue of the ramps up, because I, for one, for instance, the Sears ramp, I think is an important part of that block. I mean, it serves home furniture, it serves perhaps a small part of the courthouse parking lot, but there's not much, and hopefully future development within that whole block. So I think that the $1 really bothered me, and I think that we're going a little bit towards Mr. Larson's proposal in somewhat getting a little bit of a discussion going perhaps at a future time with regard to exactly what we want to be doing with those ramps. But I for one feel that those are a very valuable part right now of our downtown. And hopefully with the development that's promised, they will be a good part of that area. So I support Mr. Larson's amendment.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anybody else requesting to speak, so I think we're ready to vote on the amendment. And now, as a reminder, the amendment is to change the value of the parking ramp. Instead of selling it for $1, if we feel like selling it at some point, we would be charging a fair market value. All right.
You may begin voting.
It's like a video game. Right.
Motion passes 8-1.
All right, so now we have the resolution as amended. Is there anybody that wishes to, I see we're connecting. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on this? I might need you to raise your physical hand. Otherwise, if you're not, I think we're ready to vote on the resolution as amended. Whenever Clerk Caitlin says we can.
You may begin voting. Motion passes as amended 8-1.
All right, thank you, everybody. All righty. We are now on to file number 211109A. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects for a fiber connection project. I would entertain a motion. Looks like I have a motion from Herbst and a second from Watson. Does anyone wish to speak? Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question. In the packet, it stated that, this was tied through a county building right now. A portion of it ran through there, and it said in future years it was anticipated that would no longer occur. Could someone explain that to me?
I'm so glad to see our CCIT Director, Jerry. He
Thank you.
will answer your question. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Klein again, Director of the City County IT Commission. Supervisor, Councilman Killian, I think what you're talking about is the connection by the courthouse. Is that correct? Trying to remember the language on it.
Yes, and sorry, I didn't pull the specific phrase. I could have done
Sure.
that.
I think we mentioned it because we have fiber that goes from City Hall right now around the 400 block. It kind of zigzags around the old Sears building. And then it goes down the sidewalk along the Sears Mall, and it has a connection over into the courthouse. There's a vault at the end of that street, so it's kind of across from McDonald's. We would be connecting from there and going west on Forest over to Prospect. So we wouldn't actually be oh, that's right. I remember now. I remember now. The fiber that needs to, so let me explain the whole route. So it goes from there, it goes over to Prospect. A couple years ago when we redid Prospect, we ran conduit on there, so it'll go down Prospect. It'll hop in some conduit that the school district has over to their admin building at Kiefer. And then we'll go into the police station, obviously connecting to the fire station, and then we'll go across to River Drive. That fiber actually needs to connect so that we can use it here and get to those buildings. That fiber will actually get brought back in conduit over into the courthouse and connected into the courthouse. But it's just so that we can get to the police and fire building. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for that information.
All right. Any other discussion? Thank you. I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We are now on to file number 211109B, another resolution from the Finance Committee approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects. This one is for the Entrepreneurial and Education Center. I would entertain a motion. It looks like I have a motion by Watson and a second by Lukens. Any discussion? Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you to the city clerk for starting to put A and B on these numbers and stuff as was suggested, so it doesn't get mixed up. Thank you.
It's actually Mary Ann. Thank you.
Everyone will accept your thanks and praise. Thank you. All right, any other discussion? Otherwise, it looks like we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-1.
All right, thank you very much. We are now on to file number 010832. It's a resolution, it's an ordinance amendment from Public Health and Safety, amending section 5.63.010, intent and purpose, 5.63.020, definitions, section 5.63.030, permit required, section 5.163060, sidewalk cafe standards, and section 12.44.040, exceptions. I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Larson and a second by McElhaney. Any discussion? Alder Gisselman.
Yes, I'm going to be speaking against this. I think that this attachment to this historic block, I think, is beyond really what this historic downtown really would. This is a 6-month physical attachment to what I would consider one of the main historic blocks in the city. The 300 block as well as the 600 block are very historic. And I think that this physical attachment, and I can appreciate Bill if Bill would also speak, or maybe he doesn't want to speak, but I think that we should really be careful of this. It isn't something temporary. It's going to be there for 6 months. It's going to really hinder, I think, the how people walking on 3rd Street in the 300 block come to see the unique architecture, the unique features of that historic block. And I think it's going to affect the rest of this. This attachment will affect how you view really the rest of that, the west side of that block. I think it's really would be a detriment, I think, to that historic block. in the zoning, it's considered a high-rise zoning. Across the street, it's considered historic. Both sides of that 300 block are pretty historic, in my view. If you look at the architecture, built pretty much at the same time, I think they both really are credible as historic facades in the city. It's in the downtown historic district, and I think that this physical attachment in front of this building is too much, and I will be voting against this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other requests to speak, so I think we are ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 6-3.
All right, thank you. Next up, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules 6B filing. This does require a 2/3 vote. I have a motion by Watson and a second by Herbst. You don't get to debate this, so we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, rules are suspended. We are now on to file number 190405. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving the interlocal agreement between the City of Wausau and the Marathon County for 2020 Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program Award. I know that this passed Finance, but I think it was 3-0. So I guess I would entertain a motion. I have one by Alder Watson and a second by Lukens. Any discussion or questions that you'd like to be answered? All right, Alder Martins.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment here. Like you said, this passed Finance 3-0. This actually should be the 2021 Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program Award. This is because we're in 2022, and this is codifying the grant award that happened last year. So,
Housekeeping, we can take care of that.
yeah.
Without needing to amend.
But this is an interlocal agreement between the police department, the sheriff's department, and the state judicial department, state crime lab. So it's where the funding, we're just codifying the funding for last year's program. So.
All right, if there are any questions, we do have Deputy Chief here who can answer them if you have them. Otherwise, I don't see anybody requesting to speak, so I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. I always use the county version, sorry. Deputy Chief. We're now on to file number 211109. It's a joint resolution from the Human Resources and Finance Committees approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funded Projects, the Community Outreach Specialist position. I would entertain a motion. It looks like I have one by Alder McElhaney and a second by Alder Lukens. Alder Martins.
Yep, again, this passed Finance unanimously 3-0. I just want to mention that when we ranked this request with our ARPA funding matrix, it had an average ranking of 74, which is quite high for it's a very high ranking that, I guess, compared to the other programs that we've passed. So the Finance Department does support this enthusiastically.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other requests to speak. Oh, now I have one. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we had discussed this at Human Resources as well, and there was an amendment made in that committee, which my understanding was it really just reinforced what would typically happen in the event of a new or more appropriate department and assigning positions. I just wanted to speak to that for a moment. A citizen had brought this up during public comment tonight, and I think the rationale at Human Resources had been for some of us, similar to the citizens' input and opinion, that it would be preferable and more ideal if in the future there was a Health and Human Services department in the city of some form or fashion. I know this has been discussed in relation to issues like COVID and PFAS, and how not having such a department at the municipal level can sometimes create some pitfalls and challenges. But on the other side of the coin was the urgency that we were told about with the time sensitivity of this and needing to get it moving right away. So I think it's it might be helpful for the public to know that some of those concerns were shared, but currently, structurally, there is no such department, we were told. But I'm hoping in the future that a discussion does begin on perhaps filling that void departmentally or structurally, so we'd have a department that's maybe more in line with this type of personnel. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know during COVID, the city attorney and I had many discussions about a health department, and the city of Wausau did have a health department in the 70s and gave that authority over to the county. And I don't know if statutorily we can take it back, but that is a research project that we can look into should the policy body deem that necessary. So thank you. Alder Gisselman.
Well, just in that light, I would think that the HR committee can perhaps take it upon themselves. I don't know of another committee within the structure of the city that would take this on, but I think that HR, as dealing with the staff and all, would try to find an appropriate place for this person, as outlined by Mr. Killian, as we go forth. I think we see the urgency of it this evening, but I would think that I think the city would be wise to, and I would trust the HR committee to take this assignment on as we go forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder McElhaney.
Thank you. This position is best at the police at this point. We have no other. We can run through every department we have in the city, and there is no other fit. To make another department with a new department head, we don't have, maybe down the line, but right now this is a necessary thing at this point. The police department had this position before. It was with a sworn officer, so we are departing from that with a social worker, but we don't need to remake the wheel at this point because that position that was completed by Eric Lemerand was successful. So they do have the template. Now, I guess I just don't want the public to think that we're going to be making a quick move to a different department, because I personally don't see anything happening in the really quick near future for that. I don't know where another position would be under. We've given away the the health department. We don't have a social service department. We don't have those structures like the county does. So, this is an emergency. This is something that, that position was a good position. It was successful. I'm supporting this. I want somebody that we can hire quickly using that template. And yes, if down the road I did vote for the amendment, because if down the road we find something, absolutely, as we do with every position in the city, HR works with the administration every year to make sure that everybody's in the right department. So this codifies that we will look at this every year or more often if necessary. But for right now, there just is not another department in the city that would be appropriate for this position to be under or to be supervised by.
Thank you. Do we have Alder Lukens?
Sorry, I'm still getting used to this.
We all are.
So I would agree with Alder McElhaney. I have had maybe not me personally, but my colleagues and I have had some direct personal experience with Officer Lemerond when he was in that position, with some families of students that I've worked with. And so I can personally attest that his position was really important and very, very, very helpful in those matters. So I feel the same. I just wanted to state that for, it's an urgent matter. And so I'm very much in support of this. Also have heard concerns and think that, it is like a social services type of maybe position, but processes take a long time. And so I'm in support of this now because I do feel the urgency for it.
Thank you. All right, I don't see anybody else requesting to speak, so I think we are ready to vote. Not at this point. We do have public comment right after this vote.
May begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We are now on to public comment and suggestions. If you'd like to approach the podium, you're welcome to have 3 minutes and let us know what you think.
Sure. Thanks for the time again, Benjamin Erickson. So for sure, I hear the urgency. There is a drastic urgency for someone in this position. I'm familiar with Eric Lemerand's work with homeless individuals and other individuals in the community as well. Is it, if I may ask a question, for the future, is it something that could be like contracted position through the county, like through the healthcare center or through a different?
So during public comment, we are not allowed to respond, but we are taking down your question, and that is probably something that can be discussed at the HR committee.
Okay.
We don't want to be rude. It's just the Roberts Rules version of this.
All right. Yeah, so that'll be just a, again, something to look at for the future. Because I know that there probably already are contracted positions with, agreement from the city and the county. And again, just to reiterate the mental health portion of it, for sure. And just to also reiterate, it's not that I don't have faith in the police department, and it's not that I don't have faith in the chief of police. It's just the action of the video is what really got to me, and really just kind of changed my feeling about the whole thing under the police department. So, we all have those times where sometimes we do certain things, make decisions, things like that. So for sure, that's not what it's all about. It's just really, for me, it's about that video and just showing that population and making it worse for them and adding more trauma to their story, for them even to see that video themselves. Who knows how they're going to react to it? Like really, who knows if we'll see them in a couple days, if it's really impactful to their life. And it could be, and probably will be at some point. So I've had the opportunity to have conversations with those individuals. I know those individuals. I've heard parts of their stories. They come in and ask for socks, for hats, because they can't feel their toes, because they can't feel their fingers. They ask for food, because they haven't eaten in a couple days. They come in and ask for someplace just to put their head on the table and fall asleep before they can even get the food to their mouth, because they're so exhausted about having no place to go and being run out of every place, and there's no solution. So again, think about that.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to participate in public comment?
I guess the question I would have, and I know that you can't answer, is the urgency to move forward with criminalizing homelessness or see urgency to actually help these people. I have heard a lot of complaining, a lot of people are uncomfortable. What I haven't heard is true humane solutions coming from any place. And that is very disappointing because we are there on the streets. We are one of the only agencies that has boots on the ground. And we are there multiple times a week, helping, providing, crying with them. And that act of dehumanizing a group of people who are the most traumatized people you will ever meet, who are also the strongest people you will ever meet. My history goes back to, I am a former teacher of emotionally disturbed and behavior disordered kids. I worked in an institution that was the garbage pit of our society. People who wanted to throw kids away, put them there. And now I'm working on the other end of the spectrum. Those kids grew up. We would never think of videotaping children that are being abused and showing it. And the fact that we're okay with the actions of our police chief, who will now be supervising a person that is supposed to be solving these issues. I don't understand it. I don't get it. These are human beings who have been battered since the day they were born. Every day they're told that they're worthless, that they're trash, that they're druggies and drunks. They're told that by citizens. They're told that by professionals. Every day they wake up and they're reminded how little they mean to our community. And they're reminded again.
Thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I see that there's a request to speak by Alder Gisselman, but there's not anything to, oh, it's maybe an accident, so we'll just clear it. I have a motion, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, I have a motion by Herbst and a second by Larson. All those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.